Hey everybody, this is Rob Thompson with Interview with Influencers, and I'm going to call you a legend, Stu. So you're right up there as legendary status in this industry. And Stu is the COO of the International Tennis Hall of Fame up in beautiful Newport, Rhode Island, and I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be with you. And I would use the term legendary very, very loosely, please.
Well, I mean, once you survive it, that's legendary status because I heard this great quote from another legend who basically said, listen, it's hard, very, very difficult to land a job in sports. It's massively difficult to have a career in sports. And I couldn't agree with him more. So there, right there, is your certificate to be, a legend. So there you have it.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'll let you run with that.
Why not? So let's take it back a bunch of steps. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Fairfield County, Connecticut. The mean streets of Darien, Connecticut.
Very mean streets. Yeah.
And then, went away went out west to college, to Claremont McKenna College, and then came back east after 4 great years in California, and got into the advertising business and did that for, I guess, about 8 or 9 years before. And then I had, purely by luck, to be honest with you, the opportunity to move into the sports business.
Was it something that you just, like you just said, you kind of stumbled on it, or was it something that in the back of your mind you were really into it?
A little bit of both. The background is I was the account executive at Ted Bates Advertising. This goes back a ways because Ted Bates, I'm not even sure they exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I was the account person on Rolaids. And back then, Rolaids was a sponsor of the Relief Pitcher of the Year Award with Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And so through that, I was working with Major League Baseball, really, really high-tech stuff like compiling all the Relief Man stats for every year so we could update our weekly ad in the sporting news. And this was back in the days of Bruce Sutter, Dan Quisenberry, Raleigh Fingers for the Fireman of the Year Award. And so through that relationship, I got to know some people at Major League Baseball, including Rick White, who was then sort of a marketing person at Major League Baseball. And then over time, Rick got promoted to president of Major League Baseball Properties. That's when I think Peter Uberoth created Properties, and Rick was running the licensing business.
Yeah.
And then I moved to a smaller agency, and we did some advertising for Major League Baseball Properties, the Cooperstown Collection, the Authentic Diamond Collection. This is when baseball was really on the forefront of upgrading licensed merchandise above and beyond trading cards, which had been driving the business for so many years. And so I got to be friendly with Rick, and then at one point he said, hey, I'm looking for a vice president of business development. Would you be interested? I said yes, and the deal was done. So it's pretty easy. So it was lucky in that I got thrown into the baseball world through Rolaids. It was lucky that I got to know Rick and become friends with him, and then it was lucky that he had an opening and he thought of me. So it worked out.
Well, luck is only, it only goes so far with luck. I think talent and being in the relationships and, not just people liking you when you go out to dinner, but actually people trusting you when you have to perform, right? And I talk a lot about that part of it with some young mentors or mentees that I have. But so what do you think? I mean, this is something that's really intriguing to me, especially today with digital media and social media and how prevalent it is and how we communicate. I look at, and my career was, I spent a good part of my career in advertising as well. I say at this point that helped me so much understand social media. How much of advertising at a young age, especially when you're as a young professional for you, and and how advertising worked, with traditional media back then. How much did that prepare you for your job with Major League Baseball?
It quite a bit because a good advertising agency really understood all facets of a client's business, whether it be Rolaids or a bank or an airline. It's not just coming up with a creative slogan and creating a television commercial or a print ad. You really had to dig down into the strategy of the business and figure out how things work and how companies make money and become profitable. So if you understand that business, then you become a good advertising business. So that's, I didn't go to business school. I don't have an MBA. I don't have any graduate degree. So I learned business through advertising, and that allowed me to apply that to Major League Baseball because in my role of Vice President of Business Development, we were out there trying to do new ventures, new licensing programs. I led the team that created All-Star Fan Fest, which sort of became the foundation for sports experiences, and all the leagues were doing them. We're starting to do them at the time. So Fan Fest was a business. How do we generate revenue? How do we sell sponsorships? How do we market it? How do we operate it from a logistics, from ticketing operations to security? So if you don't understand all that, you can create a great event, but no one will show up, and if they show up, they have a lousy experience. So advertising really was important there, and what it also allowed me to do was be open to new ideas. Back then, this was in the middle 80s, cable was just becoming, believe it or not, cable was becoming a factor in media buys. And Ted Bates was one of the first agencies, and Ted Turner would come in and pitch us a couple times a year as he was establishing and growing TBS. And so we were one of the first agencies to recommend that 5% of a TV network buy be allocated to this thing called cable. So that was breakthrough back then, believe it or not.
Right. Jeez.
But that taught me, and so now as today with social media, I understand social media to a certain degree. I certainly value the importance, and it's a big part of what we do here at the Tennis Hall of Fame. I'm not an expert in any way, but you have to be open to what's next. And if you don't know how to do it, allow people who know how to do it, get it done.
When you were part of that, and you kind of saw when cable just first started to come, and it disrupted, the linear feeds or the CBS, the big three or big four at that time, and where you see it now, kind of living through those cycles. What's your thoughts on OTT and multiple screens?
It's so hard to come to grips with all the different opportunities out there. When you look at that stuff, you look at virtual reality. Virtual reality is great. Something else is going to replace it really, really soon. And there's going to be some new streaming avenue. There's going to be something new. So my whole theory is you have to stick your toe in the water. If there's something new out there, it sounds interesting, at least test it. At least give it a shot or talk to people about it to see if it applies to your business. Because there's so many instances, and I've been a part of them myself, where you just sort of hold back and say, well, let's let the other guys jump into that business and see how it goes. And they do, and they're successful. By the time you jump in, it's too late, and people have moved on to something else.
So what are your thoughts on, when the advertising agency world and when you're buying media back in that time when the metrics were really set by, and still to this day for Nielsen ratings, when you look at digital and there's real engagement and the data is so deep right now, what do you see in that? I mean, do you still live by those? Do you think there's some credibility left in Nielsen, or are you more apt to lean towards the big data from the digital side? Or is it just a gut feeling that you have?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Yeah, there's certainly value in Nielsen, but the data is so critical. But then the challenge is, what do you do with the data? There's a lot of data at your fingertips, but if you don't have the expertise or the organization doesn't have the resources to really utilize that data, then why bother? So it really requires a significant investment of resources. If you're going to go that route, then you need the people to follow up and use that data to maximize its value. And there's so many, and we're struggling with that a little bit here at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We've stuck our toe in the water. We're getting there, but we're a couple years behind. And we're a little bit of a small organization. We've got about 45 full-time staff members. We have a lot of different things going on, but technology is one of the areas where we've really identified there's a huge opportunity for growth and improvement.
What would you like to see there? I mean, do you find it that it's just another way to your fans and, provide exposure, or do you find it as a revenue channel?
Both.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting scenario here. We have a terrific operation. If you've ever been up here to Newport to see our facility, it's magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
We have 7 acres. We have a museum. We're housed in a historic landmark building here in Newport. But you don't make a lot of money in the museum or Hall of Fame business, so we have other sources of revenue. We have 13 grass courts. We have 6 indoor courts, so we have a year-round tennis club. We host an ATP Tour 250 tournament here, the Dell Technologies Hall of Fame Open. That happens in July. But long story short, our whole business over the past 30 years has been to drive people to come here to Newport. Whether you get people to come to Newport, or if you're visiting Newport already, come visit the Hall of Fame. And that's great. It's been successful, but it really limits our ability to grow and engage with tennis fans around the world. I mean, we're the International Tennis Hall of Fame. We're not the Newport Tennis Hall of Fame. So
Right.
We are now embarking on this new strategy to become global, and it's not by getting people from Los Angeles and Hong Kong and Moscow to come here. We need to get to them. And we have a couple of really exciting new opportunities here to not only engage with more tennis fans, but over time monetize it. And that is we are digitizing our museum content. So we're going through the process of, not all, but many of our 20,000 artifacts we have here on site will be digitized, and we can then share those with tennis fans around the globe. That's just starting this year. So that's pretty cool. The second element is we're introducing a fan voting component to the Hall of Fame voting. So fans will be able to vote, and their votes will account for a percentage of the total vote. There will still be the panel that that votes for Hall of Famers as well. But again, that will start with our class of 2019, which gets announced this July. So again, that's an opportunity for us to communicate and engage with tennis fans everywhere. And Todd Martin is our CEO. Many of you probably remember Todd was a terrific tennis player, ranked as high as number 4 in the world, got to 2 Grand Slam finals, one against Agassi, one against Sampras. Unfortunately lost them both. But Todd has this new vision of us becoming a digital company, not just a great event company. When people come here, they come to our tournament, they visit the Hall of Fame, they play tennis here, they have a great time. But we have to be much more than that. So this whole digital expansion is pretty exciting stuff, and it's forcing us to rethink the way we do business, the way we staff our organization, and the types of people we bring on board.
How much is sponsorship of the facility and of your events? But are there different levels of how a brand can integrate into your facility year round?
Yeah, very much so, and that's a key component of becoming more of a digital organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have Dell Technologies is a title sponsor of our tournament. We also have a variety of other sponsors who have tournament assets, but also a sponsor like Rolex is actually a permanent sponsor of our museum year-round. BNP Paribas is a sponsor of our Legends Ball, which is a big gala we hold every September in New York City on the last weekend of the U.S. Open. So we have different types of assets like that. But now with digitization of our museum content and fan voting, that gives us an opportunity to bring on sponsors and allow them a much broader reach than just reaching the people who either come here to Newport or maybe watch our tournament on television. So
So
that's a
now,
big opportunity for monetizing our digitization process.
so now I get you. So the strategy is to really scale the content, so bring the content out to Asia, and so people have access to it before.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
How about college? Do you host college tournaments, or if I'm a tennis promoter and I put on tournaments for high school kids or up and coming, is your facility available to rent out for those type of tournaments?
Yes, it is. We're pretty full.
Yeah.
We do have to be a little bit careful about wear and tear on our grass courts. They get pretty
Hmm.
beat up after the pros are here in July.
Hmm.
But we host a variety of New England tournaments. The USTA New England holds tournaments here. We have the U.S. National Grass Court Championships here. But perhaps one of the coolest new things we've done in the past couple of years is host a collegiate event in September. And For the past 2 years, we've invited many of the top D1 teams, men and women, 4 women's teams, 4 men's teams, and they bring their squads here to Newport in September and play round robins, and it's a great experience. They're here for
Wow.
4 days.
Yeah.
Uh, and we've had great teams. I mean, we've had teams like Cal Berkeley and Michigan and Oklahoma State, University of Florida, and they come in from all over the country. This coming year, we're going to go to D3 teams to kind of mix it up a little bit. Interestingly, many of the top Division III tennis teams, men and women, are here in the Northeast, so we can get more teams to come on in. So we're going to mix it up a little bit with D3 this year, but it's a great opportunity for these kids because many of them have never played on grass before, so it's
Hmm.
a huge learning experience.
Yeah.
Second, it's an opportunity for us to share with them the history of the sport, and they come in and they tour the museum, they talk to Todd, and they understand the value of learning, you know, how the sport became what it is. So we love doing that, and I see us doing that for a long time. We also host some Salve Regina University, which is here in Newport. They host a
Hmm.
tournament here in September. We do a lot of clinics and things with local high schools in the area. So we're really trying to reach out to do more community tennis development here on the island.
What What do you think about the IMG model in the Bolletary School? Is that something that you guys have dabbled in or looking at for a long-term strategy?
Not for us. No, we
Yeah.
really want to be more broad-based. I mean, the IMG academies are awesome, but those are
Yeah.
for the best kids in those sports. We're
Hmm.
more of a grassroots, broad reach. We want anybody to come here and play tennis, whether you're an aspiring collegiate player or whether you're just picking up the game for the first time. We want you to come here and have a great experience.
Yeah, awesome. So let's step back for a second because I want to go back and talk about your career too and what led you to this point. Because it was an incredible journey that you had from Major League Baseball. You went off to, is it First USA Bank?
That's correct.
So what was that like going from the sports property side of it, and I assume most of your duties were at the bank were on the sponsorship side. What was that transition like, and what did you learn from it?
Well, it was terrific, and it was actually more than sponsorship. That was First USA, along with MBNA Bank, were the two leaders in the affinity credit card business, and that was at the height of the business. MBNA dominated it for years with colleges and universities and sports teams, and First USA was a smaller, up-and-coming bank, also right down the street from MBNA in Wilmington, Delaware. But they had a nice collegiate business, but they wanted to get in the sports world, so they brought me in to basically establish and grow that business. So I led the team that would go and create the relationships with the PGA Tour, the Los Angeles Dodgers. We had a couple hundred different relationships. And then our marketing group would work with the teams to mine their database, to be at their events. Remember back in the day, we were the guys giving away T-shirts if you signed up for the Los Angeles Dodgers MasterCard.
You were the ones, huh?
Yes, that was us. And so it was a combination of getting the business, so negotiating the deals with the teams and competing with MBNA to get those deals, then marketing the programs, acquiring customers, acquiring cardholders, and then creating programs to activate those cards and generate a meaningful spend. That's where the bank makes its money. If you don't use your credit card, it doesn't do us any good.
Mm-hmm.
So back to your question, it was fantastic because it was a really multifaceted type of operation. It really wasn't sponsorship. It was much bigger than that. And I learned an entirely new business. I learned the credit card business and the banking business. And that was fascinating. But I did it under the auspices of sports, which is really where I wanted to be. If they had hired me to do that for nonprofits like the United Way or AARP or AAA, it would have been a lot less interesting. So it allowed me to take my sports experience to a much higher level, and it allowed me to really understand how teams operate,
Mm-hmm.
And how organizations like the PGA Tour operate, and also create a whole lot of great relationships with people throughout the industry. So that really broadened my network, if you will, of people throughout the sports and entertainment world.
The one thing I talk a lot about with young professionals, because they always, the first thing I always hear is when I ask them, where do you see yourself, or where do you want to be? What's your career or dream? A lot of times it's, I want to be the general manager of the Yankees, or, it's these bigger jobs that they see because they think they're, higher profile jobs. But the path I think for most of us is usually positions that are such building blocks in the foundation of our bigger career long term. And the learning that you do, especially at a brand or an agency side and the league side, which you've been at obviously with your career, a lot of the times those lead you to the bigger things because there's so many different skill sets that you learn along the way. And so it's amazing, and you've been really, just your career path is unbelievable. Then you went over to, I know Mills, but also with Skip Barber Racing.
Yeah, I did a short startup with the Mills Corporation. Lasted a couple of years and then kind of flamed out. But then had the opportunity with Skip Barber Racing School. It was up in Lime Rock, Connecticut. That was our worldwide headquarters. Were in
Right.
Lime Rock. And for those of you who don't know, Lime Rock is way up in the northwestern corner of Connecticut, almost in Massachusetts, almost in New York State. Beautiful
Mm-hmm.
country, great racetrack up there. But we really were a national organization. We ran racing schools and races all, I think, 20 different tracks around the country, and it was sort of a private equity group had bought the company because the old company had gone Chapter 11.
Mm-hmm.
So the private equity guys came in, they bought the assets, and really created a stronger business model and hired new people to come in and help run it. And I was lucky to be one of those people brought on to that new team. And I think one of the themes through my development of my career is, I started as a sales and marketing person, and that's how I kind of came up through the ranks. But at various stops, I was able to learn different facets of running a business. I learned the event business while at Major League Baseball Properties and at FanFest. At First USA Bank, and First USA Bank now is Chase, by the way. Bank One bought us, and Chase bought Bank One years ago. But I learned finance. I learned profitability. I learned business models. And the sophisticated, the math, if you will, behind financing. Then at Skip Barber, I was really able to, because we were pretty small, I think we had maybe 25 people on staff full time, and I was able to understand and learn things like HR, facilities, all sorts of different things that a CEO needs to understand. And a lot of what I'm doing now is, yes, I'm still very involved with sales and marketing, but also we've got a big budget here. We have 7 acres of facilities to keep up. So as you kind of move your way up through different experiences, you keep learning. And eventually you get to the point where if you're an executive director or a COO or CEO, you should have a pretty comprehensive understanding of what it takes to run a business, because it's pretty complex.
What would you say, what advice would you give to young professionals coming out of now with the sports management degree? Number one, do you find that pedigree and what college that they came from matters when you're looking to hire somebody right out of school?
No, personally, I do not. I
Yeah,
don't look at it that way, and I never have. I
yeah,
think some people do. I think
yeah.
some people might look at a sports management degree from one college versus another as being better. Um, but I think a smart hiring manager is going to look at the total person, and it's not just where he or she got a degree. It's what they bring to the party and how they fit in.
What do you see now with, and I hate the word millennial because I don't know why they bash them so much, because I think these kids just bring such a different skill set to the table. But what are you seeing now as viable skills in 2018 that, as far as advice, a kid coming out of school or been in the business for a little while, what different skill sets do you see now that are needed more so than 5 to 10 years ago?
I think that the different experiences that younger professionals are getting, and I encourage them to continue to do that. It's very easy back years ago to pigeonhole yourself as I'm just a salesperson, or I'm just a marketing person, or I'm only a hockey person, or a national governing body person. That's all I do. I think
Hmm.
that's very limiting, and I think for people coming up in the industry now, they should really be well rounded, and I think it fits in with the way millennials are thinking. They don't tend to stay in an organization for a long time. They're not going to be at the same place for 20 years, more
Hmm.
often than not. And that's not a bad thing. So
Hmm.
take that opportunity to work in baseball, work for an NGB, be in sales, understand finance. Um, it's easy to look at the exciting aspects of the sports business and sort of glorify it. I was there when I worked in Major League Baseball. It was awesome. It was really cool, but it's also hard to do the job well and to do it well. You need to understand it is a job, and if all of us are working in sports, it might be a dream come true, but you need to keep at it and don't get complacent.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate that. I think those are great words of advice. I know we talk about a lot about that as well. And once you start counting hours and start looking at what kind of money you're making off of those hours, it's over for you in this industry.
That's right.
So.
I remember we were at the World Series,
Hmm.
and I think it was probably 1993 or so. It was the Blue Jays and the Phillies, and we were in Philadelphia and hoping that the Phillies would win because nobody wanted to go back for Game 6 in Toronto. And
Hmm.
that's when we looked at ourselves and say, we're idiots. We have a chance to go to see more World Series baseball. Who wouldn't want to do that? That's when you realize it's a job and you're not there as a fan.
Right.
And by the way, the Phillies and the World Series did go back to
Right.
Toronto, and that's when Joe Carter hit the game-winning
Oh
home run.
yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I
Yep.
remember that. It's such key advice. And once you become a fan of the business and not a fan of the team or the particular sport, that's when I feel like you crossed over. When I work
Mhm.
when I work for the NFL, and people would always ask me, "Well, who's your favorite team?" And I was like, "I don't have one." You know, I don't have a favorite
Can't.
team. You
Right.
can't. I really yeah, you can't. But I didn't, because when you start working with each, my favorite, all of them are my favorite teams. And you start following more about players and people that and executives within each team. And when you really deep dive into it, there's a reason why, especially if you worked in the industry like you and I have, and a lot of the listeners, when you see the success and the continuous success of each organization and teams and across all sports, when you really know the quality of staff and the culture of these teams and the ownership groups, you realize why they're successful, and it all starts at the top. And it's interesting because it's not just about the players. It's the inner workings of that organization that really determines whether that team. I mean, there's a lot of other factors, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's no surprise when you start peeling back the onion.
Totally
So
agree. Totally agree.
yes, well, I and your time today. I know just coming back off a long weekend, it's always hard to shake out the cobwebs a little bit, but hopefully this you got your feet on the ground, run a little bit more besides the pile of stuff I'm sure you had waiting for you this morning.
That's all good. Yeah, now I'm motivated to get back to work.
No, exactly. You should. Well, every Monday morning we'll have a discussion then. But Stu, thank you so much for your time. It's tennisfame.com, www.tennisfame. Do I have that the website correct?
Yes, you did.
So if you're listening and you want more information, really follow through. Follow them on the social media channels. It's much more than just a Hall of Fame facility. As you can see, the business is growing. They're very, very diverse in what they offer. A lot of different revenue streams, and proactively going into the digital world as well, and figuring out the content and how they to their passionate fans and bringing on new fans globally. So, Stu, thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you continued success, my friend. And hopefully next time I'm up there that I'll be able to have a nice visit of the facility.
You got an open invitation. Rob, I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed spending some time with you.
Well, fantastic. This is Rob Thompson live. Thank you so much for joining us today. Interview with influencers. We did have a legend on today. So, right, mister. And we'll talk to you soon. And just hold on a second, okay?
Okay.
All right.